To rebuild and recover, we need help from the federal government. This has been a national pandemic. It's a national economic crisis, and no state can recover on its own, and we need federal help. And it's in the nation's best interest to help the states recover. What you call state and local relief has been debated for over a year. Prior administration was against providing states and localities with relief. President Biden said when he was running for election that if elected, he would provide state and local relief, and he was true to his word. He proposed $350 billion. It was accepted by the House. It was accepted by the Senate. So this is really good news. We've been waiting a long, long time for it. How the federal government ever thought the nation was going to recover if the states did not recover was always beyond me. The federal government is only a compilation of the states. You can't have a federal recovery without a state recovery. But President Biden stepped up and did what he said he was going to do. Now the question is fairness in the distribution of the $350 billion. That $350 billion goes to the Congress. They'll come up with a formula to distribute the $350 billion. And that's the next chapter in this story. What is the fair distribution of the $350 billion? And I believe that it is factually inarguable, but that New York, New Jersey, Connecticut paid a higher price for COVID than other states and other parts of this country. That is just a fact. COVID came to the United States from Europe, not from China, and those flights landed in New York and New Jersey, and they populated the tri-state region. That's why we had the explosion in the numbers early on. That's why we had deaths here before they even had COVID tests, because the virus was coming for 3 months and the federal government had no idea. It was negligence by the federal government. And when you talk about fairness, the federal government should allocate funds in a way that is fair and fair to this crisis. When a state gets hit by a hurricane, that state gets relief. It's not that every state gets relief. The places that paid the highest price for the emergency, and our state and our region paid the highest price for the emergency. We also need fairness in the tax policy. What happened during the Trump administration is it was highly political, and they used taxes to actually hurt certain states and take from certain states. They took tax money from New York, New Jersey, other Democratic states, and they transferred it to Republican states. That's what the quote-unquote SALT provision was all about. SALT is technical and confusing, state and local taxes, but they, for the first time ever, taxed the taxes that people pay. It was the first double taxation in history, and it was a pure redistribution of wealth, saying we're going to take from the richer states and give to the poorer states. They took from New York, they took from New Jersey, they took from Connecticut, they took from California, and they redistributed that money to Republican states. We still have an open litigation on it. So we say to the Congress now, be fair. Repair the damage that was done with a hyper-political administration that preceded President Biden. And be fair in the distribution of the COVID relief funds. And fair is to distribute the COVID relief funds proportionate to the damage of COVID. That's the next step. Repeal SALT, because every day that SALT is still in place, you have people paying more in taxes that they shouldn't be paying. And it hurts this state and it hurts other states. that were victims of the SALT attack, and distribute the COVID relief proportionate to COVID relief. I want to welcome our friend and our neighbor, a great colleague of mine, someone who we've worked hand in glove with all through this long year that really tested all of us and tested government, tested our individual strength to the core, but you got to see what people were made of. And I got to be in the trenches with Governor Murphy, and I can tell you that this is the kind of person you want to be in the foxhole with. He's been a great neighbor, a great friend, and an extraordinary public servant, and I'm pleased to be with him today. Governor Murphy, good to see your face.
Good to see you, Governor Cuomo. Thank you very much for having me on today. And same right back to you, period, full stop. Not just for these 342 days, that takes my breath away, but for the past 3 years since I've had the honor of serving as governor of New Jersey, we could not have had as a state a better partner across the Hudson than you and your team representing the Empire State. Everything from tax fairness to battling the virus. People say, gosh, we don't see you guys as visibly with each other as we did in the spring and early summer. That may be true, but I want to echo what you've said. The partnership with you personally, with your team, continues as strong as it has ever been, and it has been invaluable. And that partnership has saved lives without question on both sides of the Hudson. I want to just echo very briefly 2 points that you raised, Andrew. Number one, the state and local aid. We desperately need it, and I won't repeat your great comments in terms of not just the need, which is inarguable, but also the way that the need should be apportioned. We were clobbered with you in Connecticut, and Ned Lamont's done a great job there, and the Metro New York region, and that must be taken into account. Not only getting the state and local over the goal line, which I know President Biden is committed to. Spoke with Speaker Pelosi earlier in the week. The great news is the leadership in Congress gets this, but also the way that it is apportioned. And then secondly, repealing the cap on the state and local tax deduction, which was done, as you suggest, not for any practical purpose, but completely based on politics. And New York and New Jersey were already over disproportionately giving more to Washington than we get back from Washington to begin with. Now, listen, we're happy to do that if it's a fair deal. But this deduction cap made that deal a very unfair deal. Double taxation, as you rightfully point out, prioritizing other parts of the country ahead of our region, prioritizing the very wealthy and the biggest corporations over work and family. So it is high time that this thing gets taken off the books. The longer it stays on, the more people are going to get hurt. I think in New Jersey alone, Governor, it's been an increment of, I believe, of around $3 billion out of the pockets of our homeowners in the state. It's high time we got this thing off the books. I'm honored to be working on that with you and on so many other fronts. And thank you again for your extraordinary partnership and leadership.
Well, Governor, it's been my pleasure, and it really has been. You know, it's been so frenetic that we haven't really had a chance to go back and study or analyze. But I feel the same way. I couldn't have had a better partner. And if our delegations lock arms on this appropriation, on the $350 billion and how it's distributed, and if they lock arms on the repeal of SALT, which, by the way, every representative of New Jersey and New York stood up when SALT was passed, every one of them said it was unfair. Every one of them said it needed to be repealed. So now it's just a question of when, and our point is time is of the essence. We'll get through this, and we'll be the better for it. And I want to thank you personally, Phil, for everything you've done.
Same right back to you, Andrew. God bless you.
Thank you. God bless you, Phil. Thank you. Governor Murphy mentioned the cost. Our cost per year of just SALT is over $12 billion. Our cost per day is $34 million. Every day that SALT is not repealed is another $34 million that is taken from the taxpayers of this state. Think about that. And that's why time is of the essence. $34 million a day New Yorkers are spending. And that's why I focused the way I focused, and that's why we're going to continue to keep the pressure on until SALT is repealed.